In this section, we look into the important characters of the novel. We look at the roles they play, their viewpoints and philosophies, what themes they bring out, and so on. We'll start with the most important characters and make our way to some characters that are somewhat minor. So we'll not be touching on every single character that appears in the text, but we'll instead be zoning in on characters that contribute significantly enough to the story. Naturally, we start with Laetitia Johnson, aka Lacey, the main character. This novel can be seen as a coming-of-age story, but right from the beginning, Lacey is presented as a strong character, in the sense that she knows who she is and what she wants, and she faces challenges and difficulties with fierce determination. Even from the first few chapters, we see that Lacey is destined for greatness and is set up to stand out from the rest of her family. In that, she will be the first in her family to attend secondary school. Lacey understands what this means not just for her, but also for her family. Throughout the novel, we see that, particularly for a woman, education is seen pretty much as the only safeguard to a future of prosperity and independence. Lacey, who is always reading and who outshines the other students in her class, knows that by excelling at school, she can not only get a good job, but perhaps even lift her family out of poverty. This is a lot of pressure for a girl Lacey's age to bear, but the 12-year-old rises to the occasion, albeit with her fair share of troubles and missteps along the way. Not only is Lacey a studious and brilliant girl, but she is particularly fond of reading. She immerses herself into books, which shows her hunger for knowledge, but also her desire to escape into different worlds, different realities. Perhaps she is not quite satisfied with the life she is now confined to. This becomes profound when she moves to her father's house and starts plotting ways to escape. Lacey's love for stories also tells us that she's open-minded and she's willing and able to see beyond her current circumstances, to embrace the unknown, to learn and grow, to have various experiences through her books. And she even shares her pastime of reading stories with her brother, Michael, igniting his love for stories. Lacey carries with her a strong sense of identity and pride. She's not ashamed of who she is and where she's from. She displays this time after time, especially at school. One scene that stands out is from chapter 11, where in social studies class, Lacey rejects the teacher's model of a happy family, while the teacher has everyone else depicting in their books the image of a standard Caucasian nuclear family. Lacey challenges that convention by standing her ground and drawing her own colorful family, including her mother, brother, grandparents, uncles, and cousins. Lacey is also very courageous and determined. We see how, time after time, she stands up to the teachers who try to bully her and other students. In particular, she does her best to defend Anjanee, even to the point of getting into trouble. In chapter 19, Lacey basically leads a rebellion against the tyrannical circus horse, showing not just her courage, but also her sense of defiance and justice. Lacey is not the kind of girl who stands on the sidelines and watches as someone is bullied, and she's definitely not the type to take a punch to the face and not punch back. Lacey is also very compassionate, and we see this largely in how she cares for and worries about Anjanee. She also takes care of Michael by teaching him how to take care of and clean up after himself, though this is also for her own peace of mind. Lacey also reads stories to Michael, a pastime he enjoys. This hopefully somewhat offsets the dreadful interactions he has with his father, as well as the dull, meaningless interactions he has with his mother. We can tell that Lacey's family, meaning Ma, Papi, Marceline, her mother and uncles, impacts her character. Her family is poor, but when it comes to character, integrity, and work ethic, they serve as excellent examples for her. Her uncles are honest and hardworking. Ma is a rational, no-nonsense woman who runs her household with law and order, but also with compassion. Papi also has a strong moral code and provides interesting and even poetic philosophical outlooks. Marceline is free-thinking and independent, and shows Lacey that she does not need a man, or in fact anyone else, to ascribe value and purpose to her. We'll talk about these family members as we go through the section. While Lacey is definitely a strong and even heroic female character who continues to beat the odds, we cannot ignore her flaws. Her main character flaw stems from one of her strengths. Because she can be headstrong, determined, and zealous, she ends up acting impulsively from time time to time, and this worsens as the chapters progress. The best example of this happens in chapter 44, when Lacey insults not just Mrs. Lopez, but Mrs. Lopez's mother. This most definitely crosses the line. Lacey, in this scene, is overcome with emotion and speaks without thinking, only to later think about the consequences that will follow. While standing up for Anjanee is admirable, telling a teacher that her mother is a dog, and in front of the whole class no less, is here an egregious and imprudent act. Also, Lacey, in response to stress caused by the anxiety of feeling trapped by Mr. Cephas, her worry for Anjanee, her longing for home, and having to deal with racist, insensitive, small-minded teachers, ends up making a series of detrimental decisions. Her downward spiral starts when she decides that doing badly at school is a sensible way to get back at her father. She also foolishly gets involved with Doreen Sandiford and ends up breaking a major school rule. Although, seeing the stress Lacey is under throughout almost the whole novel, acting out is almost guaranteed. Lacey's acts of rebellion might serve as a reminder that even the brightest and most studious students can go astray under severe enough pressures. The truth is, Lacey, much like Anjanee, is made to bear a cross that is simply too heavy for a 12-year-old to bear. Ma is the glue that keeps her large family together. She's a matriarch, the leader of her home, and has earned the trust and respect of her family. She's very responsible, keeping track and taking charge of many family activities. Ma, even though she is poor, maintains an orderly home and teaches her children and grandchildren to be upstanding people. She's prim and proper and does her best to maintain a good image and reputation. She instills this mindset into Lacey, who, with Ma's home training, behaves quite well when she moves to her father's house, especially if we compare her to her brother, Michael. Ma is what we call a no-nonsense woman. Like Marceline, she is not afraid to speak her mind. Ma is a woman that we simply have to respect. And though she can be stern and even a little scary, she does treat others with respect as well. And we see that even though she might be considered head of the household in terms of decision making, unlike Mr. Cephas, she operates more democratically, taking everyone's feelings and ideas into consideration. For example, when it comes to Lacey moving in with her father, she calls a meeting to hear from Papi and her sons, and also gets word from Mama Patsy before signing off on anything. We also see that while Ma isn't necessarily submissive to Papi, she treats him with respect by involving him or even deferring to him when it comes to important decisions. For example, when Lacey asks her about moving back home, Ma tells her to talk to Papi about it. Papi is counterpart to Ma. Together, they run the large family from which Lacey descends. While not as vocal and probably not as involved as Ma when it comes to family affairs, Papi's presence is definitely felt, and his voice sounds with wisdom and authority. Much like Ma, he has a strong sense of morality and has earned the respect of his family and even the fear, it seems, of Mr. Cephas. He's not a man of many words, but when he does speak, one is compelled to listen. He rebukes Mr. Cephas for not being a very present father and charges him with the responsibility of taking care of Lacey as she moves in with him. Papi's idea of masculinity is in direct contrast to Mr. Cephas's. While Mr. Cephas is loud and speaks a lot, yet with little substance, Papi is a man whose few wise words can move mountains. Also, while Mr. Cephas insists upon being a hellish dictator in the house and insists upon the notion that only women should do housework, Papi allows Ma the freedom to make decisions and even take control of situations. And we see him and Ma making breakfast in the kitchen, so we know he doesn't exclude himself from housework. Papi and Ma are the pillars on which this strong family is built. Marceline is Ma's good friend and godmother to Mama Patsy. She's headstrong and defies the societal norm of women needing to be subservient to men or fulfill the purpose of bearing children. We're not sure whether Zeline has a distaste for men in general, but we know she's not fond of Mr. Cephas. Just like Ma and Mama Patsy, she knows what he is capable of. Marceline encourages and shares wisdom with Lacey. She proves to be a wise woman, predicting Anjanee's suicide long before it happens. With this, she shows that she understands that sexism, misogyny, and the lack of support from one's family are likely to end in tragedy. She does her best to protect Lacey from such an end by encouraging her to push through and get an education, despite having to endure living with her father. She also provides Lacey with relief and temporary escape, inviting her to visit her whenever she wants. Uncle Leroy is crucial to keeping the family running smoothly. He's a tireless worker worker whose sweat puts food on the table and whose training turns the young ones into farmers as well. He always encourages Lacey and boosts her confidence and is loved and admired not just by her but by the other children as well. Though he works hard and pushes them to work hard as well, he is also friendly and jovial, making them laugh as hard as they sweat. His take on masculinity centers on duty and care. He's a loyal son to Ma and Papi and a loving, caring father figure, not just to his own child but to his nieces and nephews as well. Mama Patsy is Lacey's mother. She represents a reality that is very common in the Caribbean, where parents move abroad in order to find work that enables them to financially support their family. But the trade-off is that they are then physically absent. But in Mama Patsy's case, it seems to be a lose-lose situation, as even though she does send money back to Ma and the others, because she herself isn't highly educated, she's not able to send home quite enough money. Of course, it doesn't help that Mr. Cephas does the bare minimum for Lacey. Mama Patsy endures a tough life in New York, one that she would hate for Lacey to have to endure with her. She says in a letter, "This place they call New York is not fitting for people, far less people's children." Mama Patsy, even though she's doing her best to ensure that Lacey's future is bright, is also working to brighten her own future, enrolling into classes to finally get a secondary education. This no doubt inspires Lacey and makes Ma proud. But the endeavor also serves as another string that ties Lacey to her father's house, in that if Lacey leaves her father's house and cuts off his support, it will sabotage Mama Patsy's chance of getting her education. This man is the closest thing we have to a villain in this novel. He's Lacey's father, but until recently he has not been doing much to take care of her, much to the despise of Ma and Papi. He decides to step up to the plate now that Lacey is about to begin secondary school, but we soon realize that this acceptance of responsibility is more about his own ego than Lacey's well-being. He has given up on his hopeless son Michael, but now he can boast about having a daughter that is going to secondary school. Mr. Cephas's take on masculinity contrasts with those of Uncle Leroy and Papi, in that he shows how much of a man he is by controlling, demeaning, and even abusing his wife and son. He financially supports his family, which is good, but in his mind, this gives him the right to do whatever he pleases in the house, treat them however he sees fit, and exempt himself from any and all housework. His wife is practically a servant to him, who has been bullied so much that she is afraid to look him in the eye or speak more loudly than a whisper. His son fears him, and the only interactions we see him have with his son are the ones where he shouts at him, curses him, and beats him. He is frustrated that his son is not doing well academically, but the poor boy is probably too traumatized to learn anything at school, and he certainly cannot learn anything from his father, whose idea of teaching is shouting and hitting until the student learns. When Lacey first sees Miss Velma, Mr. Cephas's wife, she thinks of her as being smiling and mournful at the same time, as well as seeming sick or sorrowing. Lacey proves to have a pretty good intuition, as we see that Miss Velma lives in constant fear, anxiety, and servitude under her husband's fist. While she did attain a secondary education and went on to get a job, after marrying Mr. Cephas, she was turned into a full-time domestic slave. Besides the one time we see her somewhat stand up to Mr. Cephas, Velma shows herself to be subservient and passive, suffering quietly. We could criticize her for being a weak woman, or we could be sympathetic toward her as she finds herself trapped in a role of servant wife, pinned down by her dependence on her husband. Not only does she accept her role as man pleaser, but this is so ingrained in her that she tries to teach Lacey that this is simply how it is meant to be. Not only is she voiceless in her marriage, but she shows no assertion at all when it comes to her son. Though the boy is only 9, he does as he pleases and ignores his mother's instructions. We could say that she has no backbone as a woman or mother, but we should also remember that her son's disobedience is endorsed by Mr. Cephas. Not only does Mr. Cephas talk down to her in front of Michael, but he even tells the boy to tell his mother to go to hell if she ever asks him to wash the dishes. It wouldn't be far-fetched to predict that within a few years, Michael will be abusing Miss Velma as well. While Anjanee's mother might represent the likely future for an uneducated woman, Miss Velma represents the fact that education is not enough to attain a life of independence. Remember, she has a secondary school education and actually had a job. Miss Velma's character might teach us that a woman must not only seek her own betterment through education, but must also believe in her own worth and value, and therefore carve out a role and purpose for herself, rather than allowing a man to do that for her. At this point, all this might seem painfully obvious obvious in this day and age, but note that this novel was published 3 decades ago and was likely written to represent an even earlier time than that. Michael is Lacey's brother and the son of Mr. and Mrs. Cephas. He's 9, but in many ways shows the maturity and sense of a toddler. He's a loose cannon, coming in and leaving whenever he pleases, leaving his room in a mess, ignoring his mother's pleas, and so on. He does, however, fear his abusive father, and for good reason. Michael is a victim of the Cephas household. His father beats and shouts at him, and his mother, being under the same subjugation as he, has no power to do anything about it. This toxic home environment is likely why he's always quick to leave the house and slow to come back. We see that Michael can actually learn and behave as he begins to improve and develop shortly after Lacey arrives and decides to train him. Michael represents what likely becomes of children whose home environment is not conducive to positive growth and development. Anjanee is Lacey's best friend and can in many ways be contrasted and compared with Lacey. Anjanee is called a coolie by Mr. Cephas, meaning her ethnicity is Indian. Despite the racial divide that exists in the society, she has no problems meshing well with Lacey. Anjanee's character represents several dark aspects of society and adds a layer of depression and cynicism to the novel. This is because while she wants more than anything else to make it through school and take care of herself and mother, who is even worse off than Miss Velma, the lack of family support makes this dream practically unreachable. Her father does not support her schooling, and her older brothers, like her father, would prefer if she would just do what women should do: stay home and do housework 24/7. Anjanee is extremely determined. Not only is she already overworked at home, but she pushes herself to work even harder to make money to send herself to school. The mental and physical effects of having to work so much and survive in such a depressing and hopeless state means that Anjanee is perpetually sick and exhausted. And even while doing her best to encourage Lacey to press on through school, Anjanee simply cannot afford to attend school often enough to keep up with her studies. She does her best, but with the pushback from her own father and brothers, and with the helplessness of her mother, her best is simply not good enough. When it becomes clear that the only future that awaits is one that looks like her mother's sorry state, Anjanee pulls the plug and commits suicide. This is easily the most depressing event in the novel, but it is actually not very shocking, as the novel did well to build up to this breaking point, especially with the use of foreshadowing, which we'll get to when we look at devices later on. Anjanee's death throws Lacey into a state of crippling depression, but the life Anjanee lived later served to inspire Lacey. Lacey knows that she must make it through school, not just for herself, but also for her best friend. The teachers in the novel serve a few important purposes. One of those is to highlight common societal views and norms which are so accepted that they're even passed down to students in school. Another role of the teachers is to illustrate how the minds of children are shaped and how societal conventions bleed from one generation into the next through indoctrination and education. The most memorable of the teachers is the math teacher, Mrs. Lopez, also called the circus horse. This antagonistic teacher is pompous, patronizing, and contemptuous. She regularly disrespects and degrades the students, and we see how this affects their emotions and even their self-esteem. She wears way too much makeup and jewelry, and her hairstyle seems like it was bought in America. She portrays herself as being better than and more important than everyone else. Mrs. Lopez is important not just to the thematic development, but also to the story's plot, as she gives Lacey reasons and opportunities to both be courageous and defiant at school. And of course, she gives Lacey a reason to get into big trouble. Mr. Tawari, the Spanish teacher, brings out issues around race and makes it clear that not even teachers are exempt from being racist. He is overly harsh toward the blacks and treats the Indians preferentially, and this prejudice leads to some plot developments where the students end up talking about race relations and getting into what it means to be racist. Mrs. McAllister, the home ec teacher, like Mr. Tawari, brings out another prejudicial aspect of society. But instead of race, we deal with gender. In her class, just as we see in Mr. Cephas' house and in Anjanee's house, the girls are the ones tasked with doing things like cooking and cleaning, while the boys don't have to do anything. Her character reinforces this theme that is largely explored through Mr. Cephas and Anjanee's father. Mrs. McAllister's role is important because she shows us that it is not just evil domineering men who think this way, but instead it is an ingrained convention, one that is simply accepted by many, like Miss Velma, as being the way things are and should be. Next is the social studies teacher, who, like the previous two, is there to highlight another societal convention or accepted viewpoint. This time, it is about not just race, but also family structure. She shows the students the picture of a white nuclear family and teaches them that this is what a happy home looks like. Basically, if your family does not look like this, you're in a broken home. This character shows how the students are brainwashed into believing that their own family structures, their own familial identities are not good enough, and that they must look to the Caucasians to see what happiness and stability look like. How appalling that this is actually a lesson in school. Further appalling is the fact that this kind of lesson is still taught today by some teachers in some schools. Through the social studies teacher's lesson, we can look critically at how colonial philosophies and thoughts of self-deprecation are fed to and consumed by children. In contrast to the 4 terrible teachers are the 2 good teachers. First, we have Miss Hafiz, who is the science teacher, but more importantly, Lacey's homeroom teacher. She's kind and compassionate, and does her best to give her students a real chance at academic success. When she finds out about the racial problems in class, she's shocked into a state of worry. She does her best to teach the students what racism is, and why it is nothing they should in any way partake in. She promotes racial unity and self-love, proving to be a positive influence on her students. Finally, we have Mr. Joseph, the English and Lit teacher. He encourages the students to find value in and be proud and appreciative of themselves and their culture, and not to think of any other culture, race, or people as being superior to, more important than, or more legitimate than they are. These 2 positive teachers provide a counterbalance to the 4 negative ones, and somewhat, though not quite, balances out the cynicism and negative messaging with wholesomeness and hope. While some students will pull more from and become more like the negative teachers, some will certainly pull more from and become more like the positive teachers. Besides Anjanee, Lacey has 3 classmates that contribute to the plot and thematic developments of the novel. The first 2 are Marlon Peters and Prasad, the mischief makers. Marlon Peters does well to offer some well-needed comic relief from time to time, but in combination with Prasad, he also exposes the blatant racism that permeates the society. They do this jokingly, which adds an incredibly jarring, dramatic irony to the scene, as we, the readers, as well as their form teacher Miss Hafiz, can clearly see how grave an issue racism is. Finally, we have Doreen Sandiford, an nefarious rule breaker. She cares more about chicken and chips than about making it through school, and runs a feared band of students who do as they please. Lacey makes the misstep of getting involved with them, which leads to her getting into some serious trouble at school. Doreen could represent the negative influences that can lure even the brightest and most diligent of students into falling off the straight and narrow. And that's it for characters. Next, we head into part 3 of the course, where we look at some major themes explored in the text.